Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Spark Coaching Live sessions. As usual, I've got my wonderful coaches, Kylie Denton. Welcome to the stage.
Thanks, Arthur. Good to be back. Good to see you again.
Just you and I last week. Good session last week with your book launch, but we missed Brahm, didn't we? He was off in Malaysia.
I know. Holidaying, speaking around the world, our global expert.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure how much speaking was being done. I saw a lot of photos of drinking and eating.
And activities.
Let's just say the fun stuff is easy to make pictures of. The hard work in the boardroom,
that's
a different thing.
Behind the scenes, right? So how many kgs do you have to work off, Brahm, before you get?
Yeah. How many?
Let's just say 12 days later of curries in the morning for breakfast.
Yeah, every time my wife and I, we used to travel a lot to like those Asian countries, and it's just like the breakfast is totally different, right? So it's like she's fully getting into the fried rice and the dumplings, and I was like, yeah, just give me my scrambled eggs. And it's like, but by the end, I was getting into it myself. But welcome back anyway. I'm sure your trip was great. Good to see you. Thanks, Brahm. And our special guest, Slayman, welcome to the stage, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Arthur. Really nice to be here. Thanks, Kylie and Brahm. Yeah.
I've got a story. I'm going to share a story. So I was with my oldest son down in the shopping centre here in Melbourne. I'm looking at this guy in the food court. Like, God, this guy looks familiar. Like, I'm looking at him, I'm staring at him. I think his wife and I think one of his children. I'm looking at him going, where do I know this guy from? And they're like, I went to school with this guy. So I'm going to this year, 2024 is a year of nostalgia for me. I went to my year 12 reunion. I'm catching up with all these old people I've never seen for like the last 20, 30 years. And here's this guy I haven't seen in 30 years, I reckon. And I'm like, he's walking out. I was like, if you're going to say something like this, you got to say something right now. Go, hey man, like, do I know you like this? And he knew me. He kind of looked around. He goes, we were to school together. And I was like, yeah. So I was like, wow. So it's like, I reckon, 30 years. And so this guy, right, I've never seen Slayman for 30 years, but he left this impression on me. Like we used to kind of like, I used to be a social butterfly. I'd go around, hang out with this person, hang out with this person. And it's under this area called the Undercroft. And I remember the last conversation with this guy, we're just talking, we're having a bit of a laugh. He's always well dressed, carried himself really well. Like, this guy's got a bit of style about him. Like I like this guy, but I never saw him again. And I thought to myself, he must have been in the library or something like that all the time, because that's someplace I never used to go. He must have been in the library the whole time studying. But there's a story here, right, Slay? So why didn't I ever see you again? What happened? And tell us, because you told me the other week, and I just thought it was fascinating. Where did you go?
Probably my intention was to go to the library. But unfortunately, I didn't make it to the library. I probably made it to the city with other juvenile delinquents, right? other misfits, so-called misfits, the outliers. And I actually got expelled from that school and 2 other schools to be exact, and I'll tell the story about that later. And I actually went through severe anxiety, a lot of social anxiety, and I think that's a lot of anxiety that a lot of young people are going through now. You see it, with people being disconnected, and that carries on in adulthood. I see a lot of clients who've got that, those fears, those anxiety holding them back from being the best they can be. So long story short, I actually got expelled from that great establishment that we both went to. That's why you didn't see me in the library or anywhere else.
Where did I go?
That's right. But, I got invited back. I actually went back to the school, and it's a beautiful story. Fast forward from the time that you saw me in the Undercroft, probably fast forward 20 years, I was getting my psychology registration, and the APRA, they were following policy. They asked me for a proof of English language proficiency. And you know those times when you thought something doesn't make sense, but the policy and the protocols tell you have to do that. And I'm sure lots of people listening to this, financial advisors, policy makers, project managers, like this doesn't make sense. But being a public servant myself, I thought, okay, I'm not going to fight the system. I'm going to call back two of the three schools I was expelled from and trying to get this school certificate that they asked me to get. Although I just finished the master's in English, right? Unbelievable. So I just followed due process, and I called them. And after she heard, you know, what I'd done, going through Duntroon and getting my master's and being an executive level leadership in public service, she called me back the next day and she said, your story just resonated with us so much. We'd like to invite you back as the guest speaker at the year 12 graduation from the high school you were expelled from.
Beautiful. Full circle.
And I reckon I just may have missed it by just a year because I think reviewed a few times. I'm joking. Yeah,
So,
full
yeah,
circle. Amazing.
full circle. Yeah. So yeah, for the last 20, 25 years, I've been figuring out, you know, how do people grow from adversity? How do people bring their best? How can we help people really shine and unlock their hidden potential? And this is what we're having a conversation about today, the equation that P equals P minus I. And did you want me to jump in to the equation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love the equation when you explained it to me when we caught up last, and I'm sure everyone's kind of wondering what the symbols stand for. Please go ahead, by all means. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ready to write.
brilliant. Ready to write. Yeah. So it was started by Timothy Callaway. He was a coach for tennis players and golfers, and he wrote a book called the Inside Game. And when he talks about that, it's, you know, there's so many things external to you, but it's what you do internally that makes a difference externally. So this is about looking inwards, lifting the bonnet, and understanding, you know, what are you really good at? What are your strengths and what tends to hold you back? So this equation really resonated for me because it's such a simplified way to simplify such complex topics such as human behavior, human motivation, excellence, accountability, integrity, courage. And it stands for P, which is your performance, be it your meeting your KPIs, achieving your vision or your dreams, be it connecting deeply with your family, with your clients, with your colleagues. So that P is equal to your potential. The P equals P. The second one is potential. And your potential is unlimited. I mean, think about it. You are created from the same matter as the universe that's ever expanding, right? So you have that divine power within you, right? You have unlimited potential. So the potential relates to things, if you want to make it more practical, more tangible, things such as your strengths. You know, what are your strengths in the business? When was the last time you looked at those strengths? We tend to skip over those strengths. We look at, you know, what's not going well. But it's really important, especially from the work in the positive psychology, to look at those strengths. And potential is also about your values, about, you know, what do you truly stand for, right? Why do you do what you do? And then the last piece of the puzzle, the third piece, is minus I, which is the interferences. Now, the interferences tend to be external and external. External interferences could have been like my example of the policy wanting me to get this high school certificate. So, you know, other external interferences, what could be the listeners' external interferences? maybe the recommendations from the Royal Commission, maybe the geopolitical situation at the moment. So these are external interferences that you may not have full control over. And as a matter of fact, the research tells us that we have about 12%, give or take, influence of the environment around us. So the second part of the I is the internal interferences. And this is where you want to look at what's holding you back, right? What's holding you back? What are the limiting beliefs? What are some unconscious biases? And I know Bram looks at that as well, and Kylie, that tends to hold you back, that are on autopilot. They are unconscious. And I love the work of Carl Jung, the famous psychiatrist, who says, if you're not aware of your unconscious reactivities, they tend to control you without you knowing, and you might think it's fate. Right? So this is an overview of the P equals P minus I equation. Let's discuss what resonated for you out of that equation, guys.
Go ahead, Kylie.
Okay. I think I'm thinking about 3 different specific areas. I love this equation. I've seen it before and used it. But to me, if I apply it in practical terms from a business perspective, what is the performance we want them to achieve? What's their potential? My whole philosophy as a coach is that everyone has a pot of gold inside of them. I'm just there to help them dig for it, right? So that's my philosophy, is they have that potential in there. I'm just going to help them dig for it. And through helping them dig for it, we figure out what the interference is in order to get the gold, right? So to me, there's that part of it from a business perspective. So I think of interference with this is more around, what are you being distracted in? What aren't you focusing on that you should be focusing on? What aren't you prioritizing? What aren't you scheduling? What are you doing that's not helping you to achieve your potential in order to get the performance that we need? And most of the time that is, I could be focused on doing scrolling on social media, or I could be focused on doing emails when I really should be writing a plan, or I really should be ringing clients, or I really should be working with my business partners. So I think about it from that perspective. But I also think about it, if we think about it in the school system, right, is performance, potential. One of my daughters has had some friend issues over the last probably 6 months. And those friend issues have caused her interference. Okay, so it's limited her potential, which has impacted her performance. So it was really that for us to be able to talk through, you've got potential there. How do you limit some of those interference and let that sort of go down the river? But also what I'm thinking about is the Olympics. You know how at the moment with the Olympics, there is so much going on in their mind at the moment, isn't it? So their performance is what they've got to do. They've got to get that gold. We know they've got potential. They wouldn't be there. How do they shut out all of that interference so they can take home the gold? So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it when I hear you say, that equation.
I love that. And it reminds me of a story from the Olympics, because I used to work at the Academy of Sport and did some work at the AIS as well as a performance psychologist there. And one of the great sayings the Olympic rowers used to say was, is this inside of our boat or outside of our boat?
Yes, that's right.
And so pausing and clarifying whether what you're doing is inside of your control or outside of your control. And it's such a great mantra to remember.
Yes.
Is this something we can control or not? What
or
do we need to focus
now?
on? Exactly.
Or later, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a great one. Hey, I personally love the idea that, like you, Slayman, I like how it's so simple.
Yes.
And I think it's so inspiring. As in, I think a lot of these formulas, let's be honest, some of them, they get a bit wanky, or they get a bit like too cerebral. They're too much in your head, or they're too dogmatic, or any of that. I love this because I fully subscribe to that notion. And I love how empowering it is. And when people start thinking just like, hey, I got everything, and there's just a few things that I got to manage well. It's my environment externally and internally that I got to manage. This is where I can really turbocharge and fully unlock my potential. So I love the simplicity of it. And I really thank you for sharing it with us. And I'm definitely going to get that book as well.
Yeah. And I think to take it a step further, when you look at your interferences, the internal interferences,
Yeah.
you're going to bump into the inner critic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, that nagging voice in your head, I'm not good enough, or the imposter syndrome. And, you know, are you sure you can do this? Are you in this league? You know, the list goes on, and I'm sure the listeners can identify with that, you know, inner critic. Next level of coaching that we do is to integrate that. It's quite powerful, and it links to Carl Jung's shadow work, right? So if you get critical at yourself for being critical at yourself, right? If the inner critic is talking about, oh, you should have done that client engagement better, you should have done this, what are you doing? And then you're hard on yourself about being hard on yourself. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, isn't it? How much energy is wastage from that? So having that deep look inwards to understand, where's this voice coming from? How can I learn from it without avoiding it? Because we know that avoiding something doesn't work. If I ask you, don't think about, you know, the horse behind me, whatever you do, don't look at that horse, whatever you do, turn your eye away, don't look at that horse. What are you going to do? Hang on, why is he looking at that horse? So if you start saying, don't think that, or don't be like that, you know, you're going to give it more energy. So, and the consequence of that is, I think, is dire if you keep kind of struggling with yourself, right? It's this internal struggle. I mean, life has struggles. That's what life is about, overcoming struggles and building resilience. But Jordan Peterson said it in a beautiful way the other day. He said, you choose your struggle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's story, isn't it? You know, when I hear you say that, it's the story we tell ourselves. And I'm often talking with my clients about, what is that story you're telling yourself? What is the story you want to be telling yourself? But I will often take them back to, where did that story start? Right? Like, so often we're told, oh, you know, I'm not an early morning person. I don't like exercise. She was never a reader. She was never this. She was never that. Then all of a sudden, I'm now living and breathing that. Whereas I actually get to be the creator of the story I want to tell, which is that interference you're talking about.
Well, you write your own movie that way. You write your own movie with the end in mind. So whatever the destination you set is where you're going to go. So I personally like the idea of, hey, program it for success. So challenge yourself on the stories you tell yourself and say, hey, this is really what I want to be true.
Yes.
Is this what I want to be true? Do I want to believe this? How is this setting me back continuing to believe this? Because, you know, really, everything could be neutral. It can go either way, like the twin studies. One becomes a convict who's you know, ready for his death sentence, and the other one becomes a highly successful person in business and life. And, you know, it's all the story that you basically pursue, that you entertain. So
I love that. And I love the metaphor. Go on, Arthur.
Yeah, look, I mean, one thing that really interested me was your comment around the struggle. What's the psychology? So, like, you know, I'm guilty of this all the time. It's like, I've got an easy lane here. Take the easy lane. But this one's really the struggle. I like this one, you know, like I could just like coast and, you know, get to where I want to go, path of least resistance. But for some reason, I always kind of like the struggle. And I put myself into positions to struggle.
Challenge.
Why do I do that? What's going on? Help me.
I wonder how many of the listeners and the viewers are thinking about the same thing. Do you tend to go the struggle path? Right?
Yeah.
You choose. How would you define it? Would you choose the struggle path, or would you choose the more difficult road, or
the hard road? You know, like the more challenging and or it might be a bit more rewarding, but it's not as easy as you can make a couple of simple decisions here. AK, just do the easy one, finish on. But for some reason, I set myself on the struggle path for some reason. Is it something that I need to prove myself or something? What's going on there? What is it?
I love that. This is coaching live. So if you want to.
Yeah. Do you want me to lie down? I'll lie down and I'll just lie down.
I've got great couches in my office, so you don't have to lie down. You can if you want to. Einstein, I think, once said, if you want to solve a problem that will save your life, spend as much time on understanding what the problem is first, and then you can solve it simply, right? And smoothly. We were taught that in the army as well. In corporal in Singapore, I think, when they were teaching us to do building clearances. He said, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You got to slow down. You get clear about what makes you go that struggle path, right? And then when you're smooth, then you can get faster and more efficient. Yeah. But in this day and age, it's so hard to slow down. Well, you are taught to believe that it's so hard to slow down because society's norms are go, go, go. We wear that as our badge of honor. Oh, how are you? Yeah, really busy. But how effective have you been, right? How are you really? So that's just the primer for this situation, right? You want to understand the problem, to look inwards, to understand what makes you do what you do, right? What makes you go to that struggle path, right? I think.
You still there, Arthur?
I'm still here.
Lying down. I think he's finding himself a couch to lie down. He's still there.
I'm still here.
So next, you want to understand your experience of that struggle, neck up and neck down. You see, when we're in this drive mode, this go, go, go mode, we tend to forget the emotional intelligence and the embodied intelligence. But that's where the real superpower is, right? Looking inwards and unlocking those two realms. If you are heading in that struggle path and you're in this go, 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 and continue to go neck up in this rational autopilot, what's the consequence? You want to understand what's going to happen. 80% of employees at the moment are saying they're at risk of burnout. Yeah. So what you're experiencing is not special to you. Obviously, it's a subjective experience that you're having, but it's it's endemic. So understanding what makes you go into that struggle mode and understanding its function. So what's the function of me doing that? And if we don't slow down to look at our behaviors and thoughts and emotions, then we're not going to be able to solve that problem. And on the other side of the problem, as Kylie and Bram and yourself, Arthur, would say, would vouch for, is great growth. So if you avoid looking at yourself going through that struggle, you're avoiding the learning. One of my favorite sayings at the moment is lean into the fear, and the fear will either disappear or you learn something.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. I love it. One of the things I remember hearing a definition of fear, and it being an acronym for false evidence appearing real.
I love
right?
it,
yeah. So, we tend to think that we've got this fear, but when I'm talking to clients, well, what's the evidence? Where is that evidence to back it up? And most of the time it's in here. It's actually not ever happened.
Yeah, it's created.
Yeah.
By the story.
Interferences. Yep. Arthur, I just think that you're such a D, mate, and the D loves overcoming challenges.
That's how I get out. Just bring it on. Yeah, come on. Let's go.
Feel good. You need that free energy.
I need it.
Yeah. I think too, I love that challenge too, Arthur, from myself. But I think I was always taught when I was, being mentored as a leader growing up, find a problem, fix it. Find a problem, fix it. So to me, there's always like, well, we can just solve problems. We can solve problems. So, you then become, you look for those in your business. How do we fix that?
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we create that?
Yeah. And we have a pathway in the brain. That's the seeking pathway. So we're wired for seeking.
Yeah.
Right? Seeking problems, seeking learning. That's how we've evolved, and we continue to evolve and adapt. So it's part of our DNA to seek that struggle. You guys have seen the inverted U shape graph, right? Where performance is on the y-axis and stress is on the x-axis.
Yes.
And so, if you struggle and you challenge yourself and get yourself out of the comfort zone, it's great. You're on that growth edge.
Yes.
However, if you over-index it, you're going to fall off the performance curve, right?
Yeah.
And we still teach that for elite athletes, and lots of the Olympians know about this performance curve.
Yes.
So, that struggle gives you that reward, gives you that achievement and success, and it's part of life. With EI, which is something we specialize in, is understanding where do you fall off that performance curve, what makes you fall off that performance curve, and how can you get back into the optimal zone of disequilibrium. And that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Simone Biles. I don't know if anyone's seen the Netflix documentary, but that's what happened to her, really, wasn't it? She fell off, and it was she had to get back. She had to learn how to get back on again. And I think when you talk about burnout, that's what's happening to so many people, but they don't know how to get back on. They don't know how to sort that out.
That's right. And we can talk at another time. Maybe that's a follow-up. It's, what's the function of staying in that autopilot of burnout? I know it's hard to reflect on, but there is often an outcome that we get from staying in that vicious cycle.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to also, we're probably running out of time. This has been an awesome session, but it's confusing autopilot with performance. Like we actually think we are performing when we're in autopilot. That I think there's a confusion there because we just do it, but we're doing it right. We're optimal. No, we're just in an autopilot state, and we actually haven't pulled it back like you've just summarized. And that's what I think what's happening. What leads to the burnout is we're just in this autopilot phase, and before we know it, we're becoming inefficient or non-optimal. And then the state is that as just described. Look, maybe another follow-up is that concept how autopilot is the enemy of performance. I think because you can autopilot for so long, but there's going to be a curve in the road. And if you remember that Simpsons episode where they stole the car. They got on cruise control. And they just like this on the straight road. And the road changed and they got straight to the cornfields. Anyway, great session. Sorry about the camera malfunction. Slayman, thank you so much, mate. Great to see you again after so many years.
Pleasure.
I love listening to you. You are quite the wise man. Great life experiences. And so thank you for your time today. Kylie and Brahm, thank you for your support today. And Slayman, we'll pop some stuff into the chat on the LinkedIn. I think you emailed me something. We can, there's a little attachment, your bio and so forth. But anything else you want to attach to the LinkedIn event as a clickable link, please do so. And maybe we can talk again and have you come on board again, and we can learn some more from you. So thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Slayman.
All right. Catch you later. Bye. See you next time.